Well, a big focus. A federal judge has blocked US President Donald Trump's executive order aimed at ending birthright citizenship for children born to foreign nationals in the United States. Now, during a hearing in Seattle, a US district judge issued a temporary restraining order halting the president's plan. The judge, appointed by President Ronald Reagan, called the executive order blatantly unconstitutional, and he expressed surprise that the Trump administration found lawyers to defend it, given the long-standing Supreme Court precedent that grants citizenship to nearly all children born on US soil under the 14th Amendment. Now, this decision comes after 22 states filed lawsuits challenging the order, arguing that it violates the Constitution. And in his remarks, the judge also noted that the legal grounds were clear and said the order boggles the mind. Well, for further clarity, we have with us legal expert from Boston, Alison Kranz, also with us on the broadcast at the moment, Cheryl Bader, who's the Associate Professor of Law from Fordham University School. Thank you so much for joining us on NDTV. Alison, to you first. The judge has called the executive order blatantly unconstitutional, but given the history of the birthright citizenship and the 14th Amendment, what specific legal principles make this order so problematic?
Oh, there's a variety of different principles. For example, even the plain language of the statement itself, the 14th Amendment, clearly demonstrates an intent to include everyone born in the United States to be a citizen. But not just that, we have a variety of different rulings that the Supreme Court has held up since this constitutional amendment was added to the Constitution. Not only that, as part of the hearing today, what was actually very interesting is the judge asked, because what's at issue is the language of whether someone is subject to the jurisdiction of the United States, and asked if these people were not subject to the jurisdiction of the United States, would they be able to be criminally prosecuted? And of course, the White House attorneys conceded, yes, they could be.
In fact, many people are arguing that this is a direct curtailment of their rights. Cheryl Bader, let's get you in here as well. What's your take on the judge's statement that this order boggles the mind? Some actually argue that the legal arguments behind this executive order are more politically driven than legally sound.
Absolutely. I think Trump is trying to make good on some promises he made in the campaign, and I'm not even sure that his legal team thought that this would have any weight with the judge. As was mentioned, the birthright citizenship is enshrined in the Constitution itself. You can't amend the Constitution by executive order. It would need 2/3 of Congress and 3/4 of the state to ratify any amendment. And the Trump supporters' argument that people who have immigrated here and have had children here, that they are not subject to the jurisdiction, makes no sense at all, right? They're supposed to pay taxes, they're supposed to follow the laws. That language was because if there are people who are here as ambassadors, they are not subject to the same laws and jurisdiction, and that was the carve out, but it has nothing to do with people who have immigrated here.
Right. Alison, now with 22 states involved in this lawsuit against Trump's executive order, how do you see this evolving? Could a legal battle of this scale potentially reach the Supreme Court?
I think absolutely it will. So there's a temporary block for the next 14 days. After that period of 14 days, the judge will review legal briefs that have been submitted by both sides and decide whether there will be an injunction that will permanently block the order until it gets to the next level of courts, the Court of Appeals. From there, if it gets to the Court of Appeals, the issue could be shut down and ended there. But this is an issue that's important to the American people, and I do predict that it will go to the Supreme Court.
Well, ladies, thank you so much for making time for us on NDTV and joining us. We will, of course, revert you for regular updates. By the way, Donald Trump has literally told the world to show him the money. Donald Trump threatened widespread tariffs on foreign goods and said OPEC is partly to blame for the ongoing war between Russia and Ukraine during an address to attendees at the World Economic Forum in Davos. By the way, Trump said he was actually leaning on Xi Jinping for China's help in ending the war in Ukraine during his speech to business leaders in Switzerland. Trump has blatantly said, "Come make your product in America and we'll give you among the lowest taxes of any nation on earth." Here's what the US President said. Listen in, followed by my colleague Vishnu Shom's ground report from Davos.
My message to every business in the world is very simple. Come make your product in America, and we will give you among the lowest taxes of any nation on earth. We're bringing them down very substantially, even from the original Trump tax cuts. But if you don't make your product in America, which is your prerogative, then very simply you will have to pay a tariff, differing amounts, but a tariff which will direct hundreds of billions of dollars and even trillions of dollars into our treasury to strengthen our economy and pay down debt. I'm also going to ask Saudi Arabia and OPEC to bring down the cost of oil. You got to bring it down, which frankly, I'm surprised they didn't do before the election. That didn't show a lot of love by them not doing it. I was a little surprised by that. If the price came down, the Russia-Ukraine war would end immediately. Right now, the price is high enough that that war will continue. You got to bring down the oil price. You got to end that war.
The address of the US President Donald Trump to the World Economic Forum had some critical points being followed very closely by international observers. India would certainly be very keen to know about his immediate foreign policy goals, which is why what he said about, for example, interest rates, very critical. He said, and I quote, "We'll ask for interest rates to drop immediately and all countries should follow America." If American interest rates do drop, then it would be a positive sign for the Indian markets. It would result in substantial buoyancy for the Indian markets. Let's wait and see what exactly transpires. He's also spoken about the need for NATO to enhance, or countries in NATO to enhance their defense spending by 5% of GDP. Remember, America has been fueling and funding the war in Ukraine in terms of providing weaponry to Kiev substantially. Perhaps there is a rationale now that America can no longer afford this indefinitely, which is why this call to European partners. At the same time, Trump says that it's a killing field now between Russia and Ukraine. The war must come to an end, which is why he feels that the war could have come to an end earlier on had Saudi Arabia lowered the cost of oil. Now, this statement is again very important because if there is a lower cost of oil, then markets around the world, including Indian markets, would be buoyant. His specific quote on oil and OPEC is, "I'm also going to ask Saudi Arabia and OPEC to bring down the cost of oil. If they would have lowered oil prices, the war between Russia and Ukraine would have ended." So 3 critical points. How will the markets react? How will the world react? Let's wait and see.
By the way, the US Senate narrowly voted to advance the nomination of Pete Hegseth, a former Fox News host and military veteran, to be President Donald Trump's Secretary of Defense, clearing the way for a vote on his confirmation later this week. The tally was actually 51 to 49 in the 100-member Senate on a procedural measure to end debate, as all but 2 of Trump's fellow Republicans voted in favor of moving ahead on the nomination, despite new allegations about his personal conduct. A final vote on his confirmation is expected later today. In other news, India's Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri is set to travel to Beijing on the 26th and 27th of this month to resume bilateral talks with China following the disengagement at the India-China border. Now, this visit will mark the first Foreign Secretary level meeting between the two nations since the 2020 border standoff. Also, it's crucial to note that Mr. Misri's visit comes just over a month after National Security Advisor Ajit Doval and Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi met in Beijing on the 18th of December, continuing the diplomatic momentum that began with the border patrolling arrangement that was announced back in October on the 21st to be precise. But this arrangement was followed by a meeting between Prime Minister Modi and Chinese President Xi Jinping during the BRICS summit in Russia's Kazan on the 23rd of October. But a little bit of context also for you here. Mr. Misri has served as India's ambassador to China during the 2020 standoff and is well versed in the nuances of China's leadership. So his deep understanding of the political landscape in Beijing is expected to play a key role in these important discussions. For further clarity, we have with us Brahma Jalani at the moment. As always, sir, thank you so much for making time for us. How should we interpret the timing of Mr. Misri's visit just a month after the meeting between Ajit Doval and Wang Yi? And what does this actually suggest about the urgency of resolving our long-standing issues?
What stands out is the odd timing. Misri will be holding talks in Beijing on India's Republic Day. The talks are scheduled for January 26th and January 27th. But the larger message from Mr. Misri's Beijing visit is that the two countries are seeking to proceed with the understanding reached by Prime Minister Modi and Chinese President Xi Jinping at their October 23rd meeting on the sidelines of a BRICS summit. That meeting highlighted the mutual interest in improving relations between the two giants. An agreement was reached for reciprocal steps toward diffusing the military standoff and ensuring peace along their border, which is one of the world's longest land borders. The military standoff, as the Indian Army chief has pointed out, has not ended. It persists, according to him, to a certain degree. There has to be other steps to reduce tensions along the frontier.
Right.
China has not reduced the number of troops it has deployed along the Himalayan frontier. Plus, during Mr. Misri's visit, several steps are going to be considered, including the Chinese demand for lifting of curbs on visas, allowing direct flights between Beijing and New Delhi. This has been a long-standing Chinese demand. And India also would like the pilgrimage to Kailash Mansarovar to resume, which was suspended by Beijing after the military standoff began.
Well, sir, thank you so much for joining us with your quick comments. We will, of course, revert to you for as and when we hear about further developments. Meanwhile, many are also questioning how the Quad statement against the coercion will actually affect our approach to China's assertiveness. But with that, let's turn our attention to what's happening on home ground at the moment. Indonesian President Prabowo Subianto arrived in the national capital on his first state visit to India. President Prabowo, who is in India until the 26th of this month, will also be the chief guest for our 76th Republic Day celebrations. The Ministry of External Affairs said that the visit will further strengthen the India-Indonesia comprehensive strategic partnership, but he has an action-packed schedule while he is here until Republic Day. Mohammad Ghazali has been tracking all the details for us. He joins us live at the moment. Ghazali, take us through the Indonesian president's plan of action while he's here.
See, it is a very significant step considering the fact that India has always prioritized India's ACT policy, the neighborhood first policy, and among this, Indonesian president's visit assumes a lot of significance. Just considering the historical and cultural connect between India and Indonesia, it must be told to our viewers that Indonesian president was our first guest in 1950 when we were celebrating our first Republic Day. And all this while in the last 75 years or so, more than 3 or 4 Indonesian presidents have been our chief guest as a state guest on the Republic Day. And the current sitting president of Indonesia is the 4th Indonesian president to be invited on Republic Day. Now, when he will be here, today he will be meeting Foreign Minister Dr. Jaishankar, and tomorrow he will be meeting Prime Minister and President as well. And among all these meetings, the focus will be to strengthen and deepen our relations with Indonesia in different sectors, be it science and technology, defense, and other sectors which we already have collaborated with Indonesia for years. But there is also one underlining tone of this visit, because earlier it was being told that perhaps the Indonesian president was clubbing his visit of India and Pakistan together. He was scheduled to visit, to attend the Republic Day program on 26th of January, and then he was scheduled to go to Pakistan. But India had raised sort of concerns because India didn't want to be seen to hosting one president on Republic Day, and the same day he would be departing to Pakistan. So as of now, we have been told that the Indonesian president will meet Prime Minister, the president here, and then he has dehyphenated his India and his Pakistan's visit, and perhaps he'll go back to Kuala Lumpur, and then from there he'll go to Islamabad. So in one way or the other, we are certainly trying to deepen our relations with one of our neighbors in the Southeast Asian region, but also trying to isolate or trying to show that this visit of Pakistan can't go along with this one. So two underlying tones of this visit. One, we are trying to deepen our relations with Indonesia in different sectors, and also trying to show what Pakistan stands for.
Ghazali, as always, thanks so much for joining us with the lowdown. Meanwhile, Pakistan's former Prime Minister Imran Khan called off reconciliatory talks with the government on Thursday, just a week after a court handed him a 14-year jail term on graft charges. The graft case is the largest that Mr. Khan faces in terms of financial impropriety. And Mr. Khan has called off negotiations. This is what the party chairman has told local media in Pakistan. And as always, news and updates continue right here on NDTV 24/7. Right after this very short break, do stay tuned. Welcome back. A teenager who killed 3 girls and wounded 10 others in a knife attack at a dance studio in England's Southport has been sentenced to life in prison. Axel Rudakubana, now 18 years old, must serve at least 52 years before being eligible for parole. The July 29th attack shocked the nation, and Judge Julian Goose called the attack profoundly damaging to the victims, their families, as well as the community. By the way, Axel Rudakubana, who's now 18 years old, had pleaded guilty to multiple charges which include murder as well as attempted murder. With that, let's turn our attention now to Germany. Following a deadly knife attack, opposition leader Friedrich Merz has pledged to implement stricter border controls if elected chancellor next month. The attack, which killed a 2-year-old boy and an adult, was carried out by an Afghan asylum seeker, and Mr. Merz criticized Germany's current migration policies, calling them misguided and urging a tougher stance on illegal immigration. The tragedy, though, has reignited debate over European Union migration rules, with other political leaders pledging action to prevent similar incidents. In other news, billionaire Frank McCourt has expressed openness to partnering with other buyers for a bid to acquire TikTok's US operations. Speaking at the World Economic Forum in Davos, McCourt emphasized that while financing is not a challenge, maintaining control of the asset is crucial. He revealed that private equity firms and family offices have offered funding options, but noted that the next move depends on TikTok's parent company ByteDance, as well as the Chinese government. But this comes as Donald Trump recently delayed enforcement of a ban on the app TikTok by 75 days. In further updates from the United States, from LA in particular, the Hughes fire burning north of Los Angeles has grown to over 10,000 acres amid strong winds and dry conditions. Firefighters are battling to contain the blaze, which has already forced tens of thousands to evacuate, and the fire is only 14% contained. And crews face additional challenges from Santa Ana winds reaching up to 65 miles per hour. In fact, 2 other major fires are also threatening nearby areas, and rain is forecasted over the weekend, offering potential relief for firefighters and residents, but that's until the weekend.